at your best effort, a game-like situation, the next day, on a scale of 1 to 10, how sore are you? And you're going to get a wide range. Right? Your tough guy is probably say, I'm a 1. Okay, great. Not so tough guys, I'm a 7. Whatever it is, all you're trying to do is establish a baseline. And then when that happens, say you have a guy who claims that he's a 3 all the time, and he goes out one day, and the next day he's a 6 or a 7. Well, maybe there's something wrong. Okay? But you want to just at least have an idea of how guys feel on a regular basis after the throw. You want to develop arm strength. There is no better arm strengthener than throwing. Right? Yes, I know everybody lifts weights. A huge part of helping guys get better. Right? Everyone wants to throw weighted balls and do velo programs. They're all great. But nothing is better for your arms developing arm strength than throwing a baseball and trying to throw it hard. I've been really lucky, our program has been really lucky. We've had some pretty wild velocity jumps. We've had guys go from 82 to 96 over the course of 2 years. We've had guys go from 78 to 92, right? A lot of those happened before we ever started using weighted balls. All we did was long toss, did our pull downs, which I'll show you here in a little bit, and we lifted weights. That was it. Now, we've implemented weighted balls into our throwing program, and it's a big part of what we do. But I know that not everyone agrees with throwing weighted balls. That's completely okay. A lot of guys have been really successful before anyone ever threw a weighted baseball. How is your throwing program affecting your pitchers? Are they getting better? Right? If they're not getting better, if there's not a noticeable improvement in your pitchers over the course of 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, is it the throwing program that's getting in the way? Is the throwing program not designed to help them improve? Right? Because I know a lot of times throwing is about getting ready to go do team defense. Right? So you get 10 minutes, you bang out a few throws. All right, we got to run our bunties. We got to run our first and third defenses. Right? You're not investing time in the actual development of the throwing arm. Okay, so make sure that your throwing program is doing whatever it can to help your guys get better. Can you use your throwing program to improve mechanics? I think your catch play, your daily catch play is the best place to develop mechanics. Because you're going to do it every single day. I'm not a big fan of doing mechanical work in the bullpen and on the game mound, or any mound for that matter. There's a couple of reasons. The biggest one being most of the guys you're working with are going to be pretty results oriented. So you put them on the mound, you're trying to change something in their delivery, you know it's going to help them, they know it's going to help them, but they are trying to throw to a catcher and the ball is just kind of scattering all over the place. It's going to be really hard to convince that kid, hey, this is what's best for you, despite the fact that the ball is currently going all over the place. But in your normal catch play, you don't really have that issue. So I think your daily grind of playing catch is probably the best place to work on the delivery. I saw this, I think I saw it on Twitter, it makes a lot of sense. Most of the throwing that your pitchers will do is not on the mound. So the habits that you're creating for your pitchers, or the habits that they're creating for themselves, more than likely are going to happen in your catch play. So what's going on during that catch play? Are they consciously picking out a target every time they throw? Are they thinking about some sort of like pre-pitch routine before they make every throw? Is there any sort of deep breathing that's taking place before every throw. Because these are the habits you want them to have in the game. I hope. But if you're not giving them an opportunity to practice them, or not making sure they understand that they should be practicing them, they probably won't. Right? You see a lot of this, I was going to play catch, it's just like immediate. Just, and you see how many throws I can get in. Right? It's not the best or most efficient use of your time. So, we spend a lot of time preparing the arm and the body to throw. I would imagine, and again, we have lots of time. I'm in a very different situation than most people. I'm the pitching coach. My boss / head coach played for me. Now, there's good and bad. Mostly good, because I tell him what I'm going to do, not the other way around, which is the best part. So I get as much time as I want. Because of that, we will probably spend between 25 and 30 minutes between jogging, stretching, our arm and body prep before we ever pick up a ball, at least the baseball. So we want to activate the body, we do a lot of foam rolling, we use the cross balls for some of the smaller, tighter knots, but we want to get the body loose, we want to be feeling pretty good, we want to get the muscles going, some blood flowing, go through a dynamic warm-up. Now a lot of this, the activation is usually done on their own. The dynamic warm-up we'll do together. If you have a dynamic warm-up that you are using currently, I'm sure it is fine. You don't need to get this like real elaborate warm-up. As long as you get blood flowing, get them moving around, it's going to be effective. I know static stretching has kind of got a bad name in the last few years. I think there's definitely a place for static stretching. I think it should probably follow more of a warm-up. But static stretching and some mobility work is a big part of what we do before we start to throw. We want to make sure that the arm is moving around. So we do Jaeger tubing like everybody else. Alan has made a fortune selling rubber tubing with wrist straps. Someone else would have thought of the wrist straps. You'd probably be rich too. We go through a Jaeger tubing workout. We go through a wrist weight workout. We go through, I'm sure you've all seen kind of the arm bars. We go through an arm bar workout. Then we get into some Plyo Care, where we're actually throwing some rubber balls. And then, really important part, before we ever start throwing, there's a brief little session where, hey, what are you doing today? What is your plan for your throwing today? Because everyone is going to be a little bit different. Everyone's going to be on a slightly different schedule based on when they're throwing next, when was their last outing, what is their role. So everyone is going to have a little different idea of what their workload should be like for that day. If you're tomorrow's starter, your workload is different than the previous game starter. So we want to make sure that they have a plan in place, that they've given it some thought, so that they know what they want to do before they ever get out there. It's not a mystery, they're ready to go. So this is kind of some of the things we're going through. This is just the Jaeger tubing. Again, nothing groundbreaking. Something you all probably do already. There's the arm bar, if you're not familiar with that. Now Cincinnati Red, Trevor Bowers made that thing famous. There's our wrist weights. There's 4 or 5 different things we'll do with the wrist weights. There's some of our Plyo Care. The Plyo Care starts in a very constrained manner on one knee, obviously throwing it backwards is more of a warm-up. Still pretty constrained with what's called a pivot pick. Now we're getting a little bit more athletic. All right, now I know that kind of looks like a jail. They're not in jail. That's actually underneath our stadium. That's the JUCO version of a pitching lab. It's not the SEC version of the pitching lab. We don't have force plates, we don't have cool TVs, we have bricks. But it does serve a purpose. And it's affectionately known as the dungeon, as you can clearly see why. All right, so how are we going to set up this throwing program? I think this is where a lot of coaches and programs make a mistake. You don't give them enough time. I get it. There's a cramped schedule. I understand. Is there anything more important than the health of your pitcher's arms? No, there isn't. Right? If you want to have a successful team, there's probably two things you need to be able to do: pitching and hitting. That's where your time should be spent. Our guys throw until they're ready. There's no timing. When I first started coaching, I timed it all. 5 minutes to get to 90 feet, 3 minutes to get to 120 feet, 2 minutes to get to 180 feet, and then a couple more minutes to do whatever you want. No longer the case. When it looks like no one can throw the ball any further, we're done. That's when we stop. We just talked about a little bit, everyone's going to be doing something a little bit different. And I know that as coaches, this is a challenge. And the longer I've coached, the more I've let guys kind of do things on their own. Not that they're completely unprepared. We educate them first before we kind of let them go. But that guy knows how his arm is going to feel that day. He may not need to go out to 250 feet that day. He might need to just go to 90 because it's barking a little bit. Right? So you have to allow for some individuality. They're all different. You can't treat them the same. You can't shove them all in the same throwing program because they won't all get the same benefit. They have to figure out on their own what is best for them. And yeah, occasionally you are going to run into the guy who you're going to have to kind of kick in the butt to get him going because he doesn't want to do enough. That happens sometimes. But I have found now, more often than not, you're doing the opposite. You're trying to reel them back in. Part of the throwing program is to set up for what's coming after your just catch play. So like a bullpen or a game outing. I always think of it as kind of a dynamic warm-up to get you ready for whatever's coming after that. We talked about implementing some sort of mechanical component. You can do this a couple different ways. You can go to guys individually and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing in your delivery. It's not quite where it needs to be. I think we can do X, Y, and Z. Let's start doing X, Y, and Z in your catch play. Or if it's earlier in the season and you have some things that as a program you feel strongly about mechanically, you can make that part of the catch play. But there should be something mechanical in that throwing program just because that's probably the best time to do it. Low stress environment, balls and strikes don't matter. I'm sure the partner doesn't want to chase the ball very often, but other than that, there's nothing to be too concerned with playing catch at practice that's going to get in the way of your mechanics. Volume over intensity early on. You can't have both. When I mean volume, when I say volume, I mean a number of throws, the amount of throws. Early in the season, volume is more important. Like in your preseason work, volume is critical. On days where someone isn't throwing, isn't feeling very good, volume and intensity should probably be adjusted. For performance, intensity is the one you're probably chasing. If you want to develop velocity, it's going to come with intensity. All right? When it's intense, you're throwing it hard. There's a high level of effort. You can't do both on any given day. It's just too much. Now, what you will also find is different guys react differently to different types of volumes and intensities. Some guys, this is just a very general perception, but kind of your slow twitch guys, the not super gifted athletes, they function better with a lot of volume. Your fast twitch guys, the explosive guys, they tend to function better with higher intensity days. Now, if that's the case, you have to kind of monitor how many of those high intensity days you're going to have. As a general rule, maybe 2 a week of like really getting after it, really cutting it loose, maybe grunting, that doesn't hurt, but that's kind of what you're looking for. All right, I'm a huge fan of long toss. It is a huge part of what we do. Again, I know that not everyone feels the same way. That's all right, you don't have to. When we long toss, we are moving our body. We are shuffling our feet, we're stepping behind. I don't care very much which one of those they choose. Depending on who you ask, someone might say shuffling is better, someone might say stepping behind is better. I'm not interested in making that decision for the guy throwing the ball, so I don't. Okay? When we long toss, it takes time. When we think of long toss, to me, long toss is like 250 and beyond. And again, college guys, a little older, a little stronger. We don't count the throws. We really don't measure the distance outside of the first few weeks of our fall practice. Usually the first week we start at 250 feet as the max. Then the following week, 275. And then after that, 300 plus. The reason for that is that our new players who are coming into the program always try to keep up with the returning players who are older, bigger, stronger. They can handle the extra volume. Someone who is new to the program, I don't know what they've been doing all summer. I don't know what kind of shape they're in. So we just want to make sure that they don't hurt themselves trying to keep up. After our long toss, we get into what we call our pull down phase. When we are pulling down, we are cutting it loose. We are letting it fly. This is when guys are like falling down on their heads and doing somersaults and all sorts of other crazy stuff. We are really trying to push the envelope. There is some risk involved in this. There's no doubt about it. But it's no riskier than throwing the ball as hard as you can off the mound in a game. The risk is the same. All right? When we pull down, as a general rule, it's usually you get out to your, how this works, you get out to your max distance, whatever that might be, and then you slowly start compressing that throw. So let's say we threw 300 feet. We're not going to throw any farther. So I throw, partner throws. One of us moves in 10 to 15 feet. I throw, partner throws 10 to 15 feet. Each one of those throws is still thrown with the same level of intent as the long one. The difference is my arm is going from 300 feet, 280 feet, 260 feet, on down until I get to what's basically my game-like release point at about 70 feet. Now, depending on how hard your guys throw, that will determine how close your guys should get. Right. If they don't throw very hard, you can get up to 60 feet. I'm pretty lucky this year. We'll probably have 3 guys that are 95 or better at some point. So these guys, when they do a real hard pull down, it's legitimately 100 miles an hour. I can't have a JC pitcher trying to catch 100 miles an hour. That doesn't work very well. We always have some flat ground work. Everyone does flat ground work. Sometimes it's scripted, sometimes it's not. One thing you can do with your flat ground work is good for pitch development, and it's good for your command work. One of the things that I would recommend is trying to add some context to your flat ground work. Not, okay, go throw 5 fastballs, low and away. How about, all right, we're going to throw those same 5 fastballs low and away. We're also going to do it with the fastest base runner from the other team at first base, and the count is 0-2. That's different. That's more usable. That's reality, right? That's what you're preparing guys for. Right? We mentioned that earlier. Is the throwing program helping performance? Right? If you can create that type of environment, those types of settings, guys will get more out of their throw. 100%. All right, so how does this progress? Early on, very constrained, mechanical focus. And we'll show you, there's going to be some video here in a second. You'll see what that looks like. Those are just a couple of the mechanical things that we do, and I can show you what some of those are. I didn't want to cram everything into the video. It just would have taken too long, so I apologize for that. But with these throws, basically there's not a ton of movement from the lower body. We're just basically working on how the arm is moving. All right, then we get into the wind-up or the stretch, or both. We're slowly taking some of the constraints away. We're getting a little more athletic. We're getting a little bit closer to the game. Now we're really going to start focusing on the target. We want this to look like you are pitching against a hitter. This is also when you can start monitoring what they do in between throws. Are they breathing deep? Is there some sort of evaluation of what the last throw just did? Right? Are they getting frustrated because it's not going the way they expected it to? And are they doing anything about that frustration? So again, anything you expect them to do in a game, you have to see them do in their throwing program. Then we have our long toss. I stole Let It Eat from Alan Jaeger. But when we start long tossing, we just want to feel like we're free. The arm's opened up, and we're just letting it go. I don't care, if they can't command the ball 300 feet. Completely okay, I'm not going to worry about that. But I want them to feel like they can just let it fly. Right? Really start cutting it loose so that they feel good about their throwing that day. Then we'll finish it up with our pull down. Again, the key to the pull down is the intensity. Now, on days you're not feeling good, but you still want to kind of pull down a little bit, the way you adjust that is instead of getting out to 300 feet and then compressing that 300-foot throw, let's say you just take it out to 200 feet and compress that 200-foot throw. Because remember, it is about the level of intensity that you're throwing the ball, not necessarily how far you're throwing. A lot of rehab throwing programs or throwing programs when you just are starting out, they talk about distance. Well, only throw it 90 feet. 90 feet doesn't tell you how hard you're throwing the ball. You can throw 90 feet at 40%. You can throw 90 feet at 100%. All right, the key is that you're paying attention to the intensity. When you're doing your pull down, it is really important that your guys try to miss down. Because if you're not missing down, you're not getting back down to that game-like release point. One of the long-time criticisms of long toss is that it changes the release point. Right? It's not a game-like release point. Very true. Very true. But if I pull down correctly, I'm going to get that game-like release point that everyone is so concerned about. I don't believe that any of that is true, but I know people believe that. Okay? Now, this next video, you're going to see some of our guys going through some of this throwing progression. You're going to see some of the mechanical stuff. You're going to see some of them going out of the stretch. You're going to see a guy long tossing. It's about 280 feet. He's long tossing the day after pitching in a game. Okay, to me, that's a sign of a pretty healthy arm. You're going to see someone pull down with some real intent. I'm also going to show you in this video, this is top secret stuff. It is my favorite flat ground drill. I don't have favorite drills. I don't talk about drills. Every drill is good. Every drill is awful. If you use the wrong drill on the wrong guy, it's a bad drill. The drill you're going to see is called 20 minutes of hell. It's not hard physically. It's very hard mentally. So you're not going to watch 20 minutes of it. It's a few seconds. Basically what 20 minutes of hell is I write a script. You have to throw 5 fastballs to a particular location in a row. Right? You and your partner both have to do this. If you don't make it 5 times in a row, you and your partner run and switch places, and then it's his turn. Once you've gotten to your fastball, then you have to do the same thing with a changeup. Then you have to do the same thing with a breaking ball. Okay? Now it's called 20 minutes of hell because 1, it's hard. It's really hard. 2, it becomes physically challenging because you're running so much if you're not hitting your target. You end up running quite a bit, as you will see. Okay? What I think, for me personally, what I think is the most valuable part is there is a ton of stress and anxiety that comes with the idea of not finishing. You get down to like 5 or 6 minutes and you haven't finished, and guys start thinking about, oh my God, I'm not going to finish. I'm not going to make it. I want them to feel that. I want them nervous. I want them a little scared, because that's what happens when you pitch in a game. You get nervous. You get anxious. You get a little scared. Right? Now, the other part of that, if you don't make it, there is an incredibly cruel punishment. But it's not cruel for the guy who doesn't finish. It's cruel for everyone else. And you will see what I mean here in a second. So this is the guy going through kind of the rocker drill. Here we have someone going through his normal stretch, throw. There's a long toss. He's actually throwing over the infielders. They're also long tossing. Here's a max effort pull down. We do practice in a city park sometimes. And here's what it looks like. And again, they don't have to sprint because it's their time, so the faster they go, that's fine. But they're already running back and forth. Now, you're going to see the punishment. He is singing Tiny Dancer to his teammates. It was an amazing performance, mind you. This kid from New York City, he's awesome. He loved every second of it. Okay? So, they give a day to prepare for their singing. They have to sing 30 seconds of a song. They can do duets. We have an exchange student from Japan. He rapped one time in English and Japanese. I think he has probably the best performance ever. All right, but going back to what Larry was talking about, I don't think 15 years ago, I would have done that. I wouldn't have allowed them to have fun. That was definitely the no fun coach back in the day. Now, thankfully, I've let go of some of that. Because, again, it's hard. I want them to enjoy themselves. I want them to have fun with each other. All right, so after throwing, they want to start recovery right after, like immediately. Okay, so they throw, they do their flat ground. If we have team defense, they run, they do their team defense. Once I know they're not throwing anymore, recovery time starts. Recovery is not resting. There's a difference. Resting is rest, recovery is recovery. They are not the same. Now, to recover, yeah, you do need some rest. But recovery and rest are different. So, basically what we do is we kind of reverse how we warmed up. So we go back to our Jaeger bands. We'll probably do a few more reps. We'll probably get a little closer, less intensity. Because what you're trying to do, here's how tissue heals. Tissue heals by sending fresh blood there. Fresh blood goes there because the muscle is being used. All right, so muscle starts to contract, sends a message to the brain, hey, I'm moving around here, send blood, please, send nutrients. We're doing work. So we go back to the shoulder tube that you saw earlier. Again, probably keep the reps down for the shoulder tube because it's pretty heavy. In the waiter walk, basically you're holding a weight like a waiter would hold a tray. Do a rebounder, you're throwing the ball down into the ground or out off a trampoline. Upward toss, you're taking a weighted ball, throwing it up, catching it on the way back down, trying to activate the rotator cuff. All right. If you've got some money, I would recommend buying Mark Pro. They're $600 or $700, I think. It's basically like a stim machine that contracts the muscle for you so that you don't have to. If you went to any big league clubhouse, you're going to see a Mark Pro in the clubhouse. Again, there is a cost issue. But they also have payment plans. I don't work for Mark Pro. I'm not getting a Mark Pro. I'm not trying to sell you a Mark Pro, but it is a very effective tool. All right, now here's where we get some controversy. We don't ice. Okay? And I'm sure some of you are going, that's crazy. Everyone ices. You're right. Everyone does ice. No study has shown that ice helps recovery. Now, ice helps with pain management. Pain management isn't recovery. It's pain management. I'll give you an example. If you broke your leg and you took Tylenol, Tylenol would manage the pain of your broken leg. It wouldn't heal the bone. It would just manage the pain. That's what ice does. Okay? If anything, it slows down the healing. When you, after you throw, or any injury really, there's going to be inflammation. Everyone is afraid of inflammation. Inflammation is an evolutionary response to injury. It is as natural as anything else you do. It is as natural as you taking a breath. Inflammation is perfectly normal. Okay? Now, what you're trying to get rid of is swelling. And now, to get the swelling out, you have to move the muscle. Swelling travels in the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is passive. That means that you have to make the lymphatic system move. You do that with contractions. Swollen. Okay? So, if you want to help with recovery, or if you want to learn more about it, look him up. He'll describe it way better than me. He has a book he's written about why ice shouldn't be used. He's a little crazy. I've spoken to him on the phone a few times. He's out there. I don't know why anyone is this passionate about hating ice, but he is. But he has also done more research than anyone else. How many of you heard of the rice protocol? Okay? The guy who wrote rice wrote the foreword to his book and said, I was wrong, Gary is right. Okay? Again, don't listen to me, look at Gary. Running. Another old thing that's been around forever, run, flush out your arm. That doesn't work. That doesn't happen. Biologically, that's not how things work. I'm not saying don't run. I'm saying that running doesn't help your arm recover. All right, just think about it. Blood goes where it is needed. If I'm running, where is the blood needed? In my legs. Where is it not going? My shoulder and elbow. Okay? Again, not saying don't run. Just don't run for pitcher's recovery. And I deal with that all the time with the kids who come into our program. All right, so breaking down kind of the throwing on a larger perspective, right? In my mind, there's 3 phases to the throwing schedule. Preseason, which is literally what it sounds like. You're moving into your season, which is where you probably are right now. Right? Then you have your in-season throwing program, and then you have your off-season throwing program. Right? So, preseason. Figure out where your first game of the year is. Start working backwards. Because that's when your guys need to get ready. Not before. Okay, don't try to rush it. I'm not going to name the Division I school, but I've had players leave us, go to the Division I school, and tell me, I've thrown 3 days in a row in fall ball. Why? Well, I might have to do that when the season starts. That's in March. This is October. That makes no sense to me. But it happens. So plan on about 12 weeks to get ready. It could be more, right? But 12 weeks is kind of like that minimum amount of time for you to really get ready. You can achieve a lot in 12 weeks. All right? Early on, we talked about it a little bit already. Volume is critical early on. It's like the old saying that you got to get in shape to get in shape. Same thing for throwers. You got to get in shape to get in shape. Volume first. As you get closer, start to shift that. Start bringing the intensity up. Bring the volume down a little bit. Before you ever get on the mound, your guys should have thrown the ball really hard at some point, just not playing catch. And then slowly start bringing the mound back into play. The way that we do that sometimes is with our warm-up stuff, our Plyo Care stuff that I showed you earlier. We'll start doing that off the mound. Just to get the feeling of standing on the slope back into their brain. Okay? So start to implement the mound back in, and eventually you're going to get into your bullpen. They should start pretty short. Our first bullpen of the fall, I believe, is 26 pitches. That's it. We don't throw very long bullpens to begin with, but the first one I think is 26 pitches. Okay? Your bullpens really should never get beyond about 40 pitches. Especially if it's just one guy throwing those 40 pitches in a row, because if you think about it, at no point in the game should a guy throw 40 pitches in a row. If he did, that was a horrible inning, and someone else probably should have been in the game. Okay? Really, if the guy does get the 40 pitches in an inning, and he survives that inning, you should probably take him out for the next inning. The reason I put an asterisk up there, you can go beyond 40 pitches if you break it up into innings. So you have 2 guys throwing their bullpens together. Number 1, he throws 20. Number 2, he throws 20. Number 1 goes back, throws 20 more. Number 2 throws 20. Number 1 goes back for 20 more. So now you've got up to 60 pitches or so, and it's just like a game. He threw, he rested, he threw, he rested, he threw, and he rested. He's done. You can do this after your scrimmages. We have a scrimmage today. I'm not there. Hopefully they're pitching okay. If not, I'll hear about it. But our two best guys who are throwing today are going to throw 2 innings, and then they're going to run down to the bullpen and get themselves to like 60, 65 pitches. Because we play on Friday, 1 week from today. But I guess I should probably be in practice. If we weren't as talented as we are this year, I probably would be. But I felt the right league, which is really good. And then eventually you start bringing it into some competition. Right? The bullpens can be competitive. They should be. You can chart them. You can have guys compete against each other. Whatever it is. Put someone back to an umpire. But make the bullpen a little more challenging. All right, in season. I think this could be really challenging sometimes. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. And again, I know that for a lot of us, this is hard to grasp. That every guy's going to have to kind of be on his own program. But the reality of it is, you will get the most out of them. They will develop the most when you do allow them some freedom to do what they want to do. And it's not just like completely hands off. It's you helping them develop the best program for them. Your bullpens, they need to be challenging. They need to be hard. They need to be coached. Bullpens are kind of a strange thing, and then I think that they're at the same time undercoached and overcoached. If you hand your pitcher a ball and say, go throw a bullpen, let me know how it goes, that's undercoached, and I know that happens. I also know it's really hard to schedule bullpens for your two-way guys. That's really a challenge, I get it. I don't have a perfect answer for that. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Right? The overcoached bullpen is when you're coaching every single pitch. That doesn't work either. I say very little during bullpens. I used to want like silence in the bullpen when guys were throwing. I didn't want anyone else around. Right? I just wanted them to focus on their bullpen. Then I realized that's never happened in a baseball game. You're never just by yourself in complete silence pitching in a game. So why are we practicing that? It doesn't make any sense. Now we have guys in the bullpen all the time. They're joking around, they're cracking jokes, they are ragging the hell out of the guy who's actually pitching, right? I participate too, because again, I want them to have to deal with some adversity outside of the bullpen, because that's what really happens. There is none of this like sanitary environment that you're ever going to pitch in. I think a lot of times we kind of get away from our throwing program. We get away from the things that made you good to begin with. Like, oh, it's in season, I can't throw as much. It's not true. Do you have to adjust it a little bit? Yeah, you probably should. But you can't just completely throw it away. If you do, your pitchers will start to go backwards. And if they're not in good enough shape, that's also going to happen. Long toss and pull down should still be part of the deal. I let guys determine when they want to pull down and when they don't. On a broad scale, we plan out a week. Like, okay, here's your bullpen day, here's your game day. It's a little tough with relievers, I get it. But here's your bullpen, here's your game. You need to get these things done in those 5 days. You tell me when you want to do it. Because they know best. As much as we want to control everything, they still know best. In season, again, this is going to depend on your guys. Some guys can handle volume, some guys can handle intensity, no one can handle both. I would tend to err more on the fewer intense days as opposed to more high volume days, just as a general rule. These 3 days, I'm almost completely hands off. Again, this was hard for me. I do want them to throw on all those days. I really do. But the day before the game, that's kind of their deal. The day of the game is definitely their deal. I used to be really strict, like, all right, we play at 2:30. It's 2 o'clock. You got to go and you have to go do this thing and do this many and get down there now. Now it's kind of like, okay, when do you think you should probably start getting ready? Okay, let's do that. All right, we keep track of that, so then we know. The day after, it's going to depend on how they feel. So I strongly encourage guys